My goodness. It's another Wednesday afternoon. It's 4:20 p.m. on YouTube time. Whatever time zone you're in, it's YouTube time. It's 4:20 p.m. on YouTube time. I think that's how that works, actually. Now that I think about it, Dustin, if this comes out at 4:20 p.m. Eastern time, at the Because Cannabis podcast, produced by Wayward Media, hosted by BC Wayman and Dustin Cava, comes out at 4:20 p.m. Cleveland National Time, represent East Coast time. What time does it come out in the great state of California? Is it 1:20 p.m. or does it wait like network programming because we're big mother trucking stars, Dustin Cava? Does it wait till 4:20 p.m. Pacific time? Which do you think it is? Educate me, please.
No, I don't know. I think that it always waits for me. I think everyone waits for me.
And that is why they call us the dynamic duo, everyone. The Because Cannabis podcast, spitting knowledge and not answering questions. That's what we like to do here every single Wednesday. Brand new episodes on YouTube, 4:20 p.m. wherever you live, I suppose. 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Easy for me to say. We're also available Thursdays on Spotify with video, as well as anywhere that you listen to audio podcast. Dustin Cava, another great show. We are heading into December. Do I sound right now, Dustin? I know you may think how I sound. You hear my voice all the time, but do I sound any different right now? Do I sound deeper voice? Do I sound a little more? Now I'm kind of replicating it. I'm having some issues, Dustin. I'm having some self-confidence issues as we wrap up the year, and I'm trying to create my resolutional list that I'm going to attack in the new year in 2024. And right now, I'm going to wear more hats. Coming soon to a YouTube podcast. Hear you. The five head is starting to catch up with me right now, but it's the voice right now, Dustin. I'm a little worried about. I know. Here's what I've already realized, and just say yes because you agree. Everyone that's subscribed to the channel, you right now, as you hit subscribe, you're going to agree with this. If I had a golden voice, gosh darn it, would I not be super fucking famous? Come on. Got the skills to pay the bills, but I talk like a 4-year-old with a cold, Dustin Cava. What's happening?
Yeah, man. No, I think you're fine. I enjoy listening to you. I think you're ridiculous, but you sound good while being ridiculous.
I sound good by being ridiculous. Easy for me to say. It's part of what this is, though, right? Sometimes, and we've been trying to figure this out as we approach, everyone, our 100th episode of the Because Cannabis podcast. That's right. We are only a few weeks away. We are in the month of December now, only a few weeks away from our 100th episode. I don't know what I've done 100 times, but 100 episodes of talking with amazing folks in the cannabis industry. When we started a long time ago, Dustin Cava, when we started with just a few shows by ourselves, and then we had Reverend Kelly, and then we had the ganja wedding guy. Like, remember the wedding dude that like did weddings, like holy ganja weddings or something like that? Like, we've come a long way to the amazing folks that we have today. I'm pretty impressed overall that we've gone from, the wedding guy, inspirational guy, to Jason's Starr guy. I didn't quite get him. He was fully prepared. Welcome to the show, Jason Starr, On The Revel, the Because Cannabis podcast. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, we are so excited, Jason. I'm just stoked about this conversation. I love what you do.
Thank you. Coming to you live from Green Avenue Studios in Brooklyn, New York.
That sounds super fancy, right? Sometimes you just got to tell them that it's fancy. I have never been to Brooklyn, New York. I have been to New York City one time, which tells you a lot about that. I'm pretty much a homebody, Jason Starr, with On The Revel. So what is one thing that would probably blow my mind if I got to Brooklyn? I don't need to know the cool things to eat. I don't need to know that. What's one thing that I am, but a Midwestern, I don't want to say young man approaching 50 years old here, but what's one thing do you think if I walked into your area that I would just be like, oh, I did not see that coming?
Oh my God. What? Look, one thing I would, the first thing that came to mind was the rats.
I was thinking like the Bell House. I was thinking like, nope, it's the rats.
Coolest city on the planet per GQ magazine a few years ago. But completely run by the rats. Yeah, the rat.
So the rat thing's not like a blown out of proportion urban legend that people tell you to stay away so they don't have their city be gentrified and prices go up. It's really legit, like rats rule the neighborhood.
No, they were fucking playing big wiz in the middle of the street last night. Set up and everything. I'm telling you, the rats persist, right? Gentrification doesn't matter. Yeah, they're like, we're here, we're staying, like build around us, if you will. Yeah.
That is amazing. We're talking with Jason E. Starr from On The Revel. We'll get to talk with some great stuff about what New York is doing in the cannabis space, some of the work you're doing. But give us a quick rundown, Jason. The 411, your quick bullet pointed resume of what you're doing and what you have going on with both On The Revel and outside of there.
Sure. So I often introduce myself as a lawyer by trade, but an educator at heart. I was a public school teacher in South Florida before I came to make my dreams come true in the Big Apple, if you will. So I went to law school up here, and I've been grinding in the policy, advocacy, community outreach space for the last 15 years or so. I do all manner of human rights work. I sometimes tell people my day job is I'm a human rights litigator, so I spend a lot of time challenging really terrible state laws targeting LGBTQ youth. But in the cannabis space, we are an events and networking company, really, and so much of the work that we do is about contributing to building the ecosystem here in New York, particularly in a way that is responsive to and accessible by communities most impacted by the war on drugs. So I don't think anything that we do is in and of itself super innovative, but I think the way that we do it and the intention that we have about how we're closing the knowledge gap and how we're just creating space for people who are new to this industry, whether they be operators, entrepreneurs, or just community members who are like, weed is fucking legal now. What does that mean? That's what we do. And so over the last 6 or so years, it's really evolved into what we like to call the New York Cannabis Clearinghouse. We don't have everything that everyone in this industry would need, but we got good relationships, good intentions. And if you stop somewhere first, we say stop it On The Revel, and we'll get you where you need to go.
How do you see
Dustin Kava
within the town?
Can you ask it one more time, Dustin? You had a slight lag there when you asked it. Just say it one more time.
I was curious at how you see On The Revel's positioning with that idea of fostering that inclusivity within the neighborhood, fostering that collaboration within the cannabis industry. How do you actually see the positioning of Revel on, with that?
Yeah, I mean, New York City is such a city of neighborhoods, right? I mean, it's this huge five boroughs that could themselves be kind of five big cities in their own right. And so when you think about community engagement, in my experience here over the last 15 years or so, the city's really broken down into neighborhoods, and also the community outreach space really serviced by organizations and initiatives that can be sort of subject matter specific. So you got people working on housing, you got people working on policing, and cannabis is really interesting, right? Because of course there's this advocacy ecosystem that developed over the last 8 or 9 years as we were moving towards fighting for legalization. But cannabis touches and concerns everything. So I see the city as this huge field for us to go out and just meet people who are already established in community, doing community facing and community service related stuff. And they're super hungry for knowledge, right? This bill was 400 and something pages. I know because I started on page 1 when I was in the governor's office, right? I mean, there's just so much stuff in there. And so I think what we find is we go out, we take the knowledge and sort of community that we've built, and a lot of it is really around the legal cannabis market, right? Because that's something that's really specific. You know, we have folks, California, Colorado, Washington, those early adopter states that went out and learned legal cannabis market knowledge. And so we have that to offer, but we also know that like community has reciprocal knowledge to offer us. So we just go in, make relationship and move from transactional to transformational, figure out what we have that people need or can use, figure out like what community is looking for, and then see if we can like make the connection. And then that like grows and builds, right? But we never go anywhere we're not invited. And we are always sort of conscious of like connecting with the trusted partners that are there already.
You know, it's interesting. I want to talk to you something here. So we have right now in Ohio, where Dustin and I, we have just recently voted to become the 24th adult use state. And just
recently, an abortion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It was a big thing.
Yeah.
So just recently we had a podcast. You can go check it out. The Ohio Issue 2 Q&A. We'll put a link in the comments below. We just had this on there, and we were replaying a video by our Ohio Senate President Matt Huffman, and he had this claim, which has seemed to be a bit inflammatory now, but it brings to light to me a bigger discussion. And if I have someone who is tiptoeing knowledgeably, clearly, Jason E. Starr with On The Revel, tiptoeing in both the legal world and the cannabis world, that the law that was passed, right? His whole claim was that, yes, maybe Ohioans wanted legal weed, but they didn't read the bill. And so they didn't understand all these nuances. And by nuances, by the way, I mean money going to social equity and not to law enforcement fund. By nuances, I mean giving people who have been disenfranchised by the plant a maybe step up for a spot at a ownership thing versus calling them criminals who smoke weed. So he had this whole thing, and we had this inflammatory discussion. Go check it out. It was fun. Matt Huffman said it. I feel like I'm I don't know. So, but it brings to light something that I think is for people who want to get into cannabis, for people who want to understand it. There is a lot of legalese, for lack of a generic word, written into that. And so, two things. Do you think, I mean, maybe in your opinion from an outside world, do you think when people vote to legalize cannabis, like let's say the next state that's up for grabs, or an IMO on your part, Jason E. Starr from On The Revel, do you think when Ohioans voted, do you think people tend to think yes weed, no weed, and then they let the rest sort it out? Or do you think as a whole, because honestly, I think most people just want yes weed, no weed, just that, you know, I think I want it, but I think we are in the minority of folks who read those nuances. So how is that, you think, when people vote? And then how can we, as part of that, help people understand these nuances so they can say, no, 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 I voted for this? Because right now we have a weak window where Ohio is about to vote and argue this very stuff. And so like we want to encourage folks to share their voice. So kind of twofold. How do you think people vote for weed? And then how can we learn more when legalese seems to get in the way sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, the awesome thing about like states like Ohio is that weed was legalized through a ballot initiative, right? So it was a question put directly to the voters, not something that the legislature went in and talked about and discussed in the context of passing a law, which we know nobody fucking pays attention to.
We have some very big case studies. You are correct.
Which is how we did it in New York, right? And I would say, you know, we did probably a lot more community outreach than otherwise would have happened if someone like me wasn't in there. But yeah, I mean, the ballot question at least gets people like engaged in the actual conversation in a way that like when you're legislated, it doesn't. And I agree with you, BC. I think it's a yes or no. And now you have this opportunity, however short, right, to get people to sort of say, okay, now how? Like, can we make sure that it's like done in a way that reflects like what we want it to look like what we wanted to see. So it's hard to get people, it's hard to break down something this complicated, right? And most people want like, give me the 5-minute like bullet points. And so I think you got to keep it simple, stupid. You got to talk about the top levels, and you did it when you described it, BC. Like, what are the issues, right? Like, should people who have been criminalized and targeted because of this plant, have an opportunity to get a leg up? Like, is that a fair thing for us to do.
Yeah, it's like half a star. That's all they want. They just want half a point
like
extra in this numerical system. And they're like, no, you can't have half a point. I'm like, come on, man. Give them a point. Give them a point. Help them out. Help some. Never mind.
And most people don't really want to get in the weeds, for lack of a better
It's a great pun. Always a great pun.
They're trusting that people who sort of make those kinds of decisions will go in with the right kind of mandates and guardrails. So I think we talk to people like, this is what we're doing. Yes or no? Like, this is what it means, right? Like, should people be getting locked up? Should we be spending, tens of millions of dollars for a small possession? Like, would you favor a framework where you're able to go into a store and buy a product that's licensed? Like, do you think, we can create an economy out of this? Most people, I would say a majority of people, as expressed in Ohio, agree with those principles. That's why they voted yes, right? So you just keep reminding people that, like, there's a lot of fucking details and 280 and this and that and capital and, and just reminding people like, nah, this is what we're doing. These very, very kind of straightforward, simple things, and keep the eye on the prize there.
Do you think that those conversations and questions happen before the voting, or, a year and a half, 2 years down the line, where it's voted in, they see adult use, they see all the things go through, but then they start questioning, well, wait a second, what are the labor and employee rights that are going on right now across the board? Where is this money actually going? I haven't really seen a difference in my community. So where the hell is these $25 million that were given, actually going? Or do you think that they're more proactive right from the get-go?
Always. I mean, how many times have you been out and about and a law is passed or something, and then you hear people going like, when the hell did they do that? Nobody asked me about it. And you're like, well, actually they had like 45 fucking right? There's too much to pay attention to, right? Like, most people, we live in this like global information economy now, where fucking everything is at your fingertips, and so then you're supposed to care about and like know about everything. But in reality, like, you really only know like the 2 or 3 or 4 square miles around you, and sure, everything that goes on. Like, the world is actually that small on an individual level. So yeah, all the time, but it's fine, right? Like, I tell people, policymaking isn't a destination; it's a practice, right? And there's always an opportunity, or we should think about it like there's always opportunity to engage and move and change and pivot. I think a lot of people in New York are like freaking out right now because they're like, oh, we got this fucking law, and now that it's being implemented, we see all these problems. And it's like, yeah, that's why the legislature is going back in January, and that's why we got to keep up the energy so that now we can start to figure out like, okay, what do we got to fix from a policy perspective that actually reflects the reality. So it's just a matter of keeping people engaged in what we consider to be like this ongoing dialogue.
All right. Well, let's ask you, since we have you here, where you sit. There was just a recently, I think the settlement happened in the state of New York. So we had this kind of end of this freeze. I think it was 3-4 months freeze on all these recreational dispensaries opening. And so now it looks like a very specific number, 436 retail license holders are now kind of finally able to open. I mean, that's the news right now. And I know it takes a little bit of slowness. So that was a big story. I saw it in the New York Times just today. So I thought we'd have you on. So what does that mean? Help us understand. I know New York's a hot topic. It's been a very confusing, even with all these states. Like Ohio's I would say a frustrating open. Like, it's going to open. It's going to be like Michigan. It's a bunch of legal harumphing and people trying to get their way and arguing over 6% going here and that. But it will be here. We'll be just like Michigan. We'll have a pretty standard tax, 10%. It'll be running fine within a year. I mean, by September, we'll have legal weed sales, no problem. You come on down here, Jason E. Starr, next fall, we'll get you some weed, probably sooner than you're going to get it in New York, it sounds like.
Shade.
I don't know how they messed it up. So where are we at now in the state, and what is this most recent lawsuit? Break that down for us. What does it mean? And when can New Yorkians finally get their hands on some legal cannabis?
You've really never been to You said New Yorkians?
Yeah, I don't know. Do I look like someone who would survive 10 minutes? I probably wouldn't survive in Buffalo, let alone New York City. That's how I'm like, you put me in like, somewhere like White Plains, New York. I might be able to. There's like 3 cities I've been to. Syracuse, that's another one. I'm just going to start naming cities. I'm more of a Syracuse guy than I am probably a Jersey guy to that. Dustin, he would fit in. You and Dustin, I feel you could hang. You got the beard.
Dustin looks like he lives in Brooklyn. This is the Brooklyn, the Sully, that's very Brooklyn right now.
He is a look. He helps keep it real, as it says. I look like a JC Penney. I'm not gonna say what I got. I'm gonna go. Tell us about New York before I get myself in trouble.
All right. Yeah, no, I mean, so you said New York confusing. I mean, here's my take on it. I'm still super bullish on this equity forward framework. And of course that means it's going to be so much more difficult, because anytime you make a road versus taking a road, you're walking into understanding that the runway is not cleared for you. So I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't want to say that without respecting that reality for particularly a lot of those 436 and others that you talk about who are really in a bind and have been losing money and just hope, I think so. But now that this lawsuit is settled, and I should just mention it was basically a lawsuit that was brought by 3 service disabled veterans who argued that as a category they were left out of that initial round of conditional retail licenses, right? Yeah. So they say, look, we should have got priority as well. But it was really an effort by sort of a larger, more shadow group to really sort of slow down or stop the priority of those licenses, right? So it helped the process for a couple of months, but it's been settled as of yesterday, which means that those individuals, I think, were able to get a license, and now the other 436. Now, remember, this cohort, this cadre, 436 people, in addition to the 28 or 30 that have opened, are all retail dispensing owners, right? Who have previous cannabis convictions in New York State, or who are close family relative of someone who had a cannabis conviction in New York State, right? I think just that metric alone puts New York far and away ahead of any other state when it comes to ownership, right? Yeah. By members directly impacted. So yes, it's been incredibly challenging. I think it's frustrating for those operators. It's frustrating for consumers who really are like, I want to go to buy licensed products. It's frustrating for the economic ecosystem that expected to build around it. But it's a delay. It's not a denial. And so what we're seeing now is general licensing is open with the priority categories. And now we have that special licensing category that was held up being open now. So it's December 2023. And, I think we finally got some gas in the tank around particularly around the retail tier. I mean, we got plenty of sun-grown New York weed just waiting to be sold.
Isn't that like an issue right now? Isn't there like this backlog? I've read one of the headlines is they got a lot of unsold product, a lot of unsold flower.
Yeah, a lot of unsold flower. And we got to rescue the farmers, right? I mean, like there's legislation that's been introduced, Cannabis Crop Rescue Act, right? Like we just got to shore up their finances, right? And when we started this, back in like 2018, when the governor's office and the executive finally got on board, and it was like, all right, all 3 branches of government are here. This is shit's going to happen in New York. Nobody really wanted to give any state money. They were like, yo, let the industry like fund the administration of the regulatory agency, right? And so a lot of people don't know that was also a factor in the beginning, right? Anybody starting, it was like the Office of Cannabis Management was like a small business that couldn't get its own financing to get started, right? It's a fucking state agency. So I'm bullish on, we just got to give some money, unrestricted for these people to shore up their finances. They're our first farmers. They went out on a limb. We wouldn't have an industry without them. And so, yeah, we got to shore up their finances and they'll flourish.
How when this lawsuit happened, did they just add these extra licenses, or did other people lose their license from prior? We've had some issues in Ohio where certain licenses were given out, and then later when certain things were wrong on the state's level, they revoked all the licenses and reissued and rechanged everything. And so some people really were out hundreds of thousands of dollars in their application fees, and the property that they bought was changed, the zoning was changed on them. There's just a whole manner of issues that caused millions and millions of dollars in loss. And licenses that were issued and said, yeah, go forward, spend more money to help create the business. And then later on say, oh, sorry, we've changed our minds. The last year of spending was kind of worthless to you. How did they kind of take into effect those original 437 licensees or 36 licensees and kind of add to it how did that process go? Was it as straightforward as it sounds? Let's just give 3 more licenses to the guys that are bitching, or yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, in New York, I thought there was a really good idea, which what we did was we cranked up the industry first with the conditional cultivator, processor, and retail dispensing program. And that was an effort to transition our small hemp farmers. Now we had a hemp program coming out of the Department of Agriculture and Markets since 2015. So there were already a lot of licensed small hemp farmers in New York. A lot of those folks had transitioned their small farms, to hemp there. So the thought was, all right, those are our first crop of small farmers. And so they were able to get conditional cultivation processing licenses. But then we had this new program, which was the retail dispensing tier. So that was a creation in trying to open the retail dispensing tier to people with those cannabis convictions first. That was the innovation. And the office thought their position was the law gives us this right. We have enough authority in the statute already. So we're going to build this program based on the existing statutory language. And what it resulted in, of course, is all the big players, all the MSOs and the folks who in 2017 and 2018 were going out and getting that VC money and and they've been getting it even before then, right? I mean, we've been having this conversation in New York even before that. So they thought that their capital advantage, their first mover advantage, these are people who are accustomed to walking in a room and, putting their shit out on the table and getting responded to. And that just wasn't what they were getting in New York. And so, they went to the governor's office, they went to the legislature, they went to the Office of Cannabis Management, and everyone was like, you're going to get in, you just got to wait. And as people who are not accustomed to being told that their money doesn't buy them whatever they want, they were like, fuck you, then we're going to go to the courts. And we're going to do it. They started, the first lawsuit they brought was from this front organization that was the Coalition for Safe and Regulated Cannabis Use or something. Just
they love their acronyms.
A bunch of MSOs who were arguing that the state's delay was allowing these illicit smoke shops to flourish, right? That argument didn't work. So then they went and got 3 service-disabled veterans and were like, oh, actually, this program leaves out,
Uh-huh.
And look, I'm an impact litigator. I know how to bring lawsuits for the purpose of shaping public narrative or opinion. I know the choices you make about which plaintiffs you choose, which stories you tell. So for me, I was looking at it and I was like, this shit is transparent as fuck. But that's what they were doing. But Dusty, you raised a good point, which is no one had ostensibly lost anything in terms of that was just a choice the state made in terms of who would be prioritized. So they did all this in reality over 400 or so licenses, when in fact they're going to be probably 1,500 or more licensed retail dispensaries around the state. So, you know, that's the dynamic as it played out in my opinion. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about this. We are talking with Jason Starr, Jason E. Starr. Where's the E? The E just a business drop in? I'm feeling it. Like Jason Starr, Jason E. Starr. I like to make people.
It stands for Edward, and actually, I use it because when I was a kid, like 5. I apparently would walk up to people and they'd be like, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "My name is Jason Edward Starr, JASON.E.STARR." So my family called me E. Because
that is fantastic.
that's yeah.
I was gonna say, I feel like we got a band form, and E. Could be your stage name. My album is Getting That VC Money. I feel like that describes. You want to talk about where I fit in? I'm at Getting That VC Money is my first album that I'm dropping. I don't know about the streets, but I'm pitching that business plan. People. All right, so we are talking, and we had, Jason brings up a lot of great points about MSOs and such. So let's talk a little bit, Jason, about what you're doing then with On The Revel and what they have going on and how things like Revelry, which is happening. You have one coming up in February of 2024 is the chief impact officer. And I'm going to let you talk.
I was like, I haven't even seen this.
I'm going to play this video here. Hold on, I'll tell you what. Let's do this. I'm going to do this. Let me stop this screen share. Let me bring this other one. We're just marketing without.
Where the fuck did you get that from?
All right, here we go. I'm going to play this video, which is kind of like their promo video for this event.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk. It's like a minute and a half long, and then we'll talk about it when we come out of here. Hold on a second. Maybe.
You got it. You got it.
We'll
We
see
are
if he
the
actually got it.
advocates.
He's got it.
I'm going to start it over. Hold on. My
We
bad.
are the dreamers and the schemers. We are the innovators and the believers. We are the advocates, trendsetters, healers, and teachers. We turn dope into hope. We create something out of nothing. We are attorneys, returning citizens, and Ivy Leaguers. We go against the grain and we bet against the odds. We are stoners, business owners, and we are community leaders. What if the burgeoning cannabis industry was a true reflection of New York's diversity? What if business owners in the legacy market continue to thrive in the regulated world? What if we create a community of like-minded leaders in the industry and we all thrive together? We believe this is possible.
New York City,
New York Cannabis
is blunt culture. I did not see a pipe, it was all blunt.
And there's like two things. We obviously have to talk about the video. See what back. If we're gonna go back, if you listen to the beginning of the show, if you subscribed, that's the voice I want. That dude, man, that's silk right there. That's silk sheet material right there. Well done, gentlemen.
That is the brother Cos Marte, who recently just opened his dispensary in the Lower East Side called Bud. Cos is formerly incarcerated and started a workout program when he was released called Con Body that really took off. And so yeah, he's one of our licensed retail dispensary card program participants.
That's awesome. See, that's what we're talking about. So let's talk a little bit about what On The Revel is doing, what Revelry can be. Get your chance to get it out there. By the way, little shout out. We saw you in that video there, Jason Starr, looking fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what's coming up with Revelry 2024, what it is and how it helps people avoid the big MSO crunch, how we can help educate and inform people so they can be like the gentleman we were just talking about.
Yeah, so our company On The Revel is really a parent company of a collection of curated networking and educational events. And Revelry is our signature Business of Cannabis conference, annual Business of Cannabis conference. We also do the annual block party, which is our summer love letter to the community. We also this year started Revelry Buyers Club, which is our B2B event, and industry night, which is an opportunity for all of our burgeoning industry participants to come together and meet one another, enjoy each other while they're not working. So that's what we do. And Revelry is, again, our annual business conference. What we really noticed in the like conference space, Lulu and Jacoby, our founders, always say when they were out in California, in Colorado and Oregon, the conference scene was male, pale, and stale. And so
That's my second album, by the way.
yeah.
That's my Forgetting the VC Money and Male, Pale, and Stale. Well, we are just on the road to stardom right now.
But you have the government side, right? And we fight to make sure that the frameworks that they give us are equity forward and have space for communities most impacted by their own drugs, small business owners, small farmers, etc. But we have to do the work on the outside to like till the ground and get those community members ready. Like it's nothing for a VC guy or someone in one of these MSOs to like put on a suit and go to one of these conferences and kind of feel like they belong. And what we hear so much from community is, even if somebody throws them a free ticket or two to $1,000, $2,500 event, they don't feel like themselves. They feel like a visitor. They feel like an outsider. They don't feel like an owner of the ecosystem. And I think it was Bayard Rustin says, "What good is the right to sit at a lunch counter if I can't afford to buy a hamburger?" So like the work that we do is kind of like, how do you afford to buy the hamburger now that you can sit at the lunch counter? And so that's why everything we do is very intentional. Like I said, we aren't creating something that it doesn't exist in this industry or other industries, right? There's just always an opportunity, a need for trade shows and business conferences and those types of things. But for us, the innovation and intentionality really comes in curating that environment, specifically because we know and are from the communities who the state has said, these are the people that we want to at least prioritize in helping to restore some of the harm that we cause by racist and discriminatory enforcement. So we ride along that intention and do the work to till the ground for a community to make sure that people are ready for those opportunities.
How do you best collect the data to know where the most productive form of your time or money should be spent? How do you go through that and say, this actually really did make a big impact? I know we had boots on the ground in this borough doing this thing, and we heard a lot from the community and their stories, but how do we prove that it's working? How do you go about that when you are constantly creating these initiatives and these programs and the conferences and all these things to bring the community together and feel heard? How do you quantify that with the data?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, to be honest with you, like so much of it is anecdotal. I will say a couple of things though. The organization Revel started as the Cannabis Tech Meetup group in 2017, and it was literally just like Lulu and Jacoby at a bar talking to like people in the tech industry who were like, "Oh, cannabis, where's the relationship?" And so it's really evolved and developed into this sort of sophisticated kind of company. So I think one metric is just like how much our revenue has grown from sponsorship, right? And we've been very discerning about who we accept money from, but the pot has grown significantly. So it's meant that we're able to sort of expand and grow our events and footprint, certainly elevate our events to a level, again, that looks like a lot of our quote unquote competitors or people who are doing other things in the space. Increased participation, just the sheer number of people that we're able to touch, and expansion of our programs. And then I think a lot of, like when I say anecdotal, I can sort of point to several brands that have given testimony that they started by coming to a Revel event and now are on shelves in New York. Flamer, one of the one of the only queer-owned cannabis brands. As a queer person in New York, like always trying to give a shout out to my rainbow siblings, right? On the shelves because they started at Revel. Buddha Chief, my neighbor, right, came to a Revel event and was one of the first card applicants. So those are some of the ways, but you're right. We're always thinking about how do we quantify and assess that impact so we can go back to the folks who do have capital and resources and say, like, this is something that is an important part of your spend, because it's important for this industry to have really strong foundations. Like, if we don't win, nobody's gonna win, right? If this community of people don't win in New York, so we're committed to that.
You know, I'm glad that you brought it up because I wanted to talk to you a little bit today because I know, Jason, currently, in addition to working with On The Revel, right, you also are part of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. And you're one of the biggest LGBTQ plus, civil rights membership, and that's an important part of it. And I feel like, and it's rightfully so, not to diminish it, but when we do talk about diversity in the industry, it typically is either female or African-American ownership that we typically refer to. And I think having a more diverse ownership, maybe it's based off disability, but definitely based off orientation is something that's important, and having that confidence, because I think it's very obviously, as we know, indicative of the consumer. So talk about what you're doing there, the importance of that. What's the scene like in New York? Let's talk about that a little bit, give you a chance to celebrate a lot of the hard work that you've done to foster and continue to foster the culture.
Listen, I mean, like, there's just such a long history there. We in the cannabis world, talk about Brownie Mary and the Buyers Clubs and the relationship that folks in the cannabis space had to particularly like those activists, early activists, ACT UP and housing. I mean, look at this. Fucking the first retail dispensary in New York was opened by Housing Works, which is the oldest HIV and AIDS service organization in the city, right? So the story writes itself in some awesome ways. But so definitely, I think that there's similarity in the struggle. Queer people are accustomed to and used to existing on the margins of society in the way that cannabis users and people who understand, love, and respect this plant have been as well. So there's that shared identity, and then of course there's just the culture. I mean, New York, I'm arguing, is I think the capital of culture. We're excited about the opportunities here for brands to develop, right? So people don't even need to. So it's a whole sort of part of the business that I think is going to be huge here in New York. And queer people and queer community have always been a contributor to, and I think on the forefront of culture in New York and elsewhere. So it's been really great to see some, but not enough, ownership. And I think we have a lot of room to grow there. And it's also been just great to see young queer people here in New York and elsewhere who are really facing a new generation of politically motivated hate.
Yeah.
Be able to turn to this plant for medicinal purpose, for therapeutic purpose, for recreational purposes, and not have to worry about contact with the criminal punishment system. So there's a lot there. And personally, as someone who's litigating a lot of these cases, weed is absolutely personally necessary. So I'm grateful that it's even more integrated into my own personal care as we deal with a lot of really difficult shit, particularly on behalf of our young people.
I have noticed that New York does seem to have a lot more freedom to express their differences within the businesses themselves. We do not get anything like that in Ohio. Very, very, very rarely. They really try to kind of put the blinders on and just kind of walk the straight and narrow, not to ruffle anyone's feathers or anything. And New York seems like it is the community is actually embracing those businesses and allowing them to thrive. And I just find that I haven't seen that truly in almost any other state, in any other market. And so I really do think it's a powerful thing that you guys are creating there, and something that I hope that other states take notice of and see the potential in it, and that the consumers themselves feel like they can finally align with a brand that represents them and that has the same want for the future as them, which we just don't get in Ohio. It's pretty much just a buy on price point fucking
You don't
thing.
get that most places, though. I mean, we know that most places it's budget, it's cheap, highest high, lowest price, right? And so it's going to be interesting to see that culture.
They're not naming any dispensary specifically, but there's a dispensary in like in Soho, or one of the more sort of trendy boutique-ish kind of shopping neighborhoods, and there's like $400 designer bongs in there that are like interior design pieces. So like there's that, and then there's like, you know, go in, like get my shit, like get out, you know. So there's gonna, I think there's gonna be just like a wide diversity of retail experiences to be had, and that's not even sort of getting into on-site consumption, which we barely scrape the surface. I think the experiential aspect of this industry, given how many tourists we have, so transient population, that's going to be super interesting. Like the cannabis clubs, the on-site consumption. We did for the first time at our block party this past summer, on-site delivery. And just the notion that like people could come to a community block party and like also go to a kiosk, order some weed, and then like have it delivered.
That's awesome.
Yeah. People were just like, oh, I fuck with this. Like,
yeah.
I always go back to the social lounges in the sense of, like, when I travel, I do see a need. I go to Vegas or something like that, and I would love to be able to have a safe space, not by the hotel, not by the casinos, where they're not upset about something, to be able to partake. But I never thought that there was a product design that actually allowed that to happen for a social lounge. I smoke a joint. I still am waiting X amount of time before it kicks in. I have X amount of time before it stops, or even a beverage to wait an hour after I drank it to kick in. And we recently talked to a company, iBliss, who has a 1 minute acting, 100% absorption in 1 minute edible or drink. And that to me is something where now I start seeing the potential for a social lounge. Now I can take my 5 milligram shot, and within 45 seconds, I'm like, holy shit, I can feel it work its way down.
And it has to wear off quicker too, like alcohol, because otherwise it's the Starbucks problem, is you have one $5 cup of coffee and then you hang out for 3 hours. So if you have one edible for whatever you pay, $20, even if you overcharge because you're the rent and all that stuff, you give them $20 for a bite of a 15 milligram or something. That's a 6-hour experience. You got to sell a lot of merch, right? Other revenue streams. So I think that is kind of the future. When consumption lounges, just Dustin and I's hot take here, when they figure out how to have the products that have ultra fast absorption, ultra fast reaction, and the secret key is you toss a little CBD and shit in there to make it a decent amount of reduction, right? You don't want that high to last. We're going to be that future for that high. I think that's when consumption lounges really get rolling.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think the consumer community, right? Like I said, people like having delivery on site at our event was just an innovation, like an element that the consumer really responded to. I don't know how, to your point, like profitable that was for our delivery partner. It was a great sort of test run at things, so it was on both sides. But you're right, as a business model, it'll be interesting to see like how you sort of hit that like necessary revenue to operate on-site consumption and sustain it with like what consumer experience what the consumer expects out of the experience on one side of the experience. I think we'll start in New York at integrating them into like marquee community, like this year Afropunk had Onsite sales. Everyone knows that Afropunk's a huge like Governor's Ball, Rock the Bells, like those kinds of things that are kind of quintessential to have some on-site sales, consumption, integration, activation. That's, I think, where a lot of folks are going to start. And that's going to be exciting for consumers.
It's going to be lots of excitement. We've been talking this episode. Jason Starr, man, thank you for joining us. It felt like an hour just went by like that. Make sure you check out in the description below. We'll have Jason's link. We'll have On The Revel links. You have events like Revelry. You have other events throughout the year happening, as well as just, as you said, connections to connections in a state like New York, which is going to embrace that culture. And I know there's going to be a link for, we had Lulu on our show previously. If you want to get the backstory about that tech conference, we talk in depth with Lulu about those early days. So you can find that in the description below as well. Jason Starr, thank you for joining us. I feel like we just got going. Two things. Here's what I know. If Dustin and I, if he ever manages to get me somehow to where I can maybe put on a flat cap, pretend to be cool, and visit the city of Brooklyn.
You got the stash already.
I'm working on it. I got to twist it a bit.
Now he just needs to be forging swords and shit.
I prefer my cannabis wrapped in paper, so it based off just that quick thing I saw from ontherevel.com. That New York's my kind of state. I'm a blunt kind of guy, so I love that. We're gonna get to New York. We're gonna smoke a little bit with Jason Starr because it's legal, and hopefully, Jason, we get you back on the show. We really appreciated the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
It really was, man. You are awesome. And everything you do has a purpose. And it's very rare that we get to find someone who really is in that passion state all the time. And really, it seems like you're constantly in a battle, but the reasons why you fight are so admirable. And I'm excited that you came today, and it really means a lot to me and BC that you were here. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege to fight. It's a privilege to be a part of this beautiful community that loves this plant. So so happy to meet you all, and yeah, definitely check us out on the Revel, YouTube, Instagram, and if you are in New York or will be in New York, come see us in person. We'd love to meet you all.
All right, let's say goodbye to Jason. Thank you very much for joining the show. You guys at home, thank you very much for watching us here on the Because Cannabis podcast every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube, every Thursday, Spotify with video. Check us out there. Give us a follow. And anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts, you can follow us socially at MeetWM. We'll have all those links, all the links to what Jason has going on, what the On The Revel social media, as well as our social media. Check them out. Give them a follow. We would appreciate a subscription and a share. We got a lot of great stuff as we move forward. Only a few episodes away as we finish off 2023 with 100 episodes and a very, very special guest. So we're excited for that. Thank you for joining us this week, everyone. We'll be back next Wednesday. Brand new episode of Because Cannabis, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube, and Thursday, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Dustin, see you next week, sir.
I'm going to roll up a couple bombers.